Should be a very informative evening with Brian Gerrish. Just before we start, as many people here will be aware, unfortunately, over the weekend, Brian Hall, the peace campaigner, died from lung cancer, and the Kent Freedom Movement was very much part of that campaign. Especially Eddie and Debbie have been real troopers, staying there overnight many times and really supporting the campaign fully. And we're all very sorry that Brian has passed, and we'll just try and keep going with it. But I'd just like, before we get underway, I'd like to remember Brian. If we could, instead of having a minute's silence, if we could have a minute's of applause for him. So Brian. Brian Moore, for all you did, spending 10 years at that Parliament Peace campaign. Unbelievable dedication.
Definitely.
Absolutely astounding. Okay, anyway, on to tonight's presentation. I'm sure everybody here will be aware of Brian Gerrish. If you're not, he's been campaigning since about 2004 against government corruption, and he will be talking about various aspects of that, including the supposed charity Common Purpose tonight. Give us an update on that, and also a little bit about the Birkenhead event as well. A bit of an update on that. So, without further ado, can we give a round of applause for Brian Gerrish? Like I say, we will stop at 9 o'clock for a break for half an hour. Brian will take questions 10 minutes before that, so if you could keep your questions until Brian asks you for them, and then it will just run smoothly. Then we'll have a break till 9:30, and then he'll do another hour again with questions at the end. So,
okay, thank you very much. Okay, small pause. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Big thank you to Chris and the Kent Freedom Movement for putting this evening together. And it's great to come to an event where there's a packed room. It's all about getting the message out, and these groups now are starting to spread up all over the country. So I think we're going to get quite a lot of information over tonight. Questions are important. I'm happy to take questions for as long as I can, as long as we've got the room. So later on, if you've got questions to ask, fire away, and I'll do my best to answer them. I was born in Kent before I was taught to speak posh. That's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? But I was born in Gillingham. I'm not going to tell you when, but it was an increasingly long time ago, so we're going to forget that. Okay, now, I'm very lucky because Friday we were up in Edinburgh with Sovereign Independent team. And if you haven't seen Sovereign Independent newspaper before, this is the one that started off in Ireland, and now they've decided to bring it over here. So there's a distribution started in UK, which is absolutely fantastic, because the more routes that we've got for getting the truth out, the better. So whether it's videos or papers or whatever, we need to push at them. What we did in Ireland is an update talk on common purpose. Now, if I could just ask, how many in the room know anything about common purpose or something about it? Okay, so majority do, and there's a few people who don't. So that's usually the situation. So what I did in Edinburgh was an update talk, and we're going to do a big update on the website shortly, because although it appears to have gone quiet, in fact there's been more and more work done by researchers. So I hope that you'll enjoy the package we got for you tonight. Now, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is a what?
A mouse.
A mouse. Yeah. Now that's interesting actually, because I didn't wonder whether you might say it was a rat. And it isn't, it's a mouse. And the mouse is the theme of this talk. And you'll see why in a minute. But if we think about mice, they're quite sweet little creatures, but what's the problem with them?
Multiply.
Pardon?
They multiply.
They multiply. They also wee and poop over your food. So it's not a good thing to have too many mice around in your house. But very often it's not until you see the first one that you realise that you've got a problem with lots of them. And as the guys just said, they breed. So I've put a little mouse there, and I want you to remember that mouse as the theme of the talk, and I shall test you on it shortly. Now, what I want to do very quickly is just go through these statements and see whether they ring a bell with you. It might be a little bit small, but I wanted to get some of them on. Families. It's getting hard. The families are breaking up. And the state is beginning to take children. Is that statement true?
Definitely.
Just give me yeah. Education. We're tending towards ignorance. So young people are leaving school and they're not really equipped to deal with life, whether it's skills training or knowledge of history or their country or their culture. It's all going into sort of a bit of a limp pool. Is that true?
Definitely.
That's true. Society. Erosion of individual responsibility. So a lot of people think that they can just take benefits. They don't want to work, but many people can't get a job. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword on that one. And we're seeing hatred come into the thing. In society, we're constantly seeing groups who are tending to be at each other's throats. There's divisions. So we're all here in the same country, but we're seeing divisions between different groups and different cultures. Is that true?
Definitely.
Yeah. Health. Well, we've got a problem with alcohol. I've had my beer, but I've put it over to one side, so you can't get at me. But okay, there's drinking in moderation, and there's problems out in the streets with young people at weekends, and it's getting pretty bad. And for me, the first time I saw a young lady urinating in the street, I thought maybe we've gone too far. That was actually up in Newcastle, if you want to know where. Drugs, well, we know there's a drug problem. Obesity, might have spelled that wrong, but it's a problem. Enfeebled masses. Now that's just a feeling that society's just got, it's got limp, it's got tired. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
And culture, well, we're seeing people get fixated on pop music or pop stars, or film stars, people with lots of money, but they haven't actually got many moral standards, or they haven't got much fibre to them. They're just glittery and in the limelight. So that's something that's happening. And religion is being attacked. Now, I don't like the word religion because it's different from spirituality. If we talk religion, we're talking churches, and then there's dogma and a set of rules. But if we think spiritual terms, it's still being attacked. I personally get the impression the state doesn't want us to be too spiritual. So I'm watching you, but in general you're agreeing that all those statements are true, or generally true. Law and order. Do we trust our judges and courts?
No.
Well, okay, you've produced a reaction there. I've been in court quite a lot over the last few months, which I'll talk about in the second half when we talk about children. But I've learnt that you can't trust the judges and you can't trust the barristers and you can't trust many of the solicitors. And that's a pretty poor state, because if we haven't got justice, we're in a difficult position. There's other stuff happening. Culture. If I just come back to it, this is a huge horse's head, which is in London by Marble Arch. And if you look at it, it's not nice. You know, it's not just my impression, because there were several of us in the car. That's why this is rain actually coming down on the car windscreen. But you look at these things and they're not nice. You've got a pyramid thing, or there's a pyramid thing in cities down the road. We've got phalluses turning up in shopping centres in Basingstoke. You've got twisted metal artwork appearing, which is not nice. Once you notice it, you suddenly start to see it all over the place. And there's a reason for it, because it's an attack on our minds. And it's being done through twisted, perverted artwork. This is a little dicky bird that's appeared in Plymouth. I don't know how much they paid for it. I don't know who voted that this thing appeared. It's quite tall. That's the height of a person. And I've just put a little comment on it. What is it? Yeah? So if you look around, you'll see in this country all this weird artwork appearing, and there's a reason for it. Somebody is paying for it, somebody wants it to appear. Up in central London, they had a statue of a pregnant woman with one side cut away, so that you could see the child inside her, and half her face is cut away. I haven't got time to show you the photograph, but they're there, and they're popping up all over this country, and there's a reason. It's an attack on your mind. So if we do a little bit more of it very quickly, but I just want to get your minds working. Internal politics, we're seeing disunity. We're seeing posturing leaders. You've only got to watch Blair or Cameron on TV. It's all about who I am. Yeah? Substance subordinate to image. So they're not really giving you the substance. It's all about spin and image and what's said on the television. I've got to be careful with my hands, because they use their hands a lot. Jobs. How many people know somebody who's unemployed at the moment? Yeah, it's growing and growing, and young people haven't got jobs, they've got no hope of jobs. And the government has got no hope of creating those jobs, because we're being scammed over the money supply system. So we've got demoralisation, people are being alienated. They're young, they're looking ahead for their lives, they haven't even got a job, so they've got no future. The economy, excessive taxation. Everything we touch, you buy a gallon of fuel and you're talking whatever, £6 a gallon. There's not many little businesses that are going to run on that. Destruction of industry. Well, we don't have an industry, we don't make anything. We don't shipbuild, we don't build cars, we don't produce steel. On one site, and that's now in foreign hands. We don't produce munitions, we don't produce armoured vehicles, we can't defend ourselves. Currency, abuse of power by bureaucrats. Foreign relations, fear. Everything's about fear, isn't it? The war in Afghanistan, terrorists, Libya, Egypt. Everything you look at is reflecting fear and worry about what's going to happen in the future. And this is an interesting thing, wrong priorities. So David Cameron can spend £250 million prosecuting an unlawful war in Libya, but he can't find the money for healthcare. It's obvious the priorities are all wrong. Security. The military is becoming incapable of doing the job, and that's why the senior officers have been speaking out over the last few days. The Navy hasn't got the ships, the RAF hasn't got aircraft, and the Army is losing men, but it's required to do more and more overseas. We've got to cooperate. We can't defend ourselves as a nation, we've got to work with the French, who've looked after us for year after year over the centuries. So this is where we're heading. National standing. The nation is destroyed, subsumed into multinational mechanisms. All influence of us as a nation is lost. Now all the things I've put up there are not just an idle list. They came off documentation which came out of the Soviet Union, which said Western democracies are going to be attacked in each of these ways. So when you have said, yes, this is happening, I say to you it was supposed to happen because we're all being attacked. And this is where my military background helps a bit, because it's normal for me to look at other people and say, what are they actually up to? So there's this attack going on, a psychological, socio-economic attack. It's a mouthful, but it's real. Instead of guns and bullets, something's pulling the country apart.
Mhm.
So now the test, what was the theme of the talk?
The mice.
The mouse. You sure? You got to smile a bit. When we were up in Edinburgh, I got some smiles. So, so what's this?
A rat.
Thank you. That's the point of beer, isn't it, right?
She told them at the start.
We had a little joke coming up in the car that went and said that basically the Kent audience wouldn't get the rat joke when Cameron appeared, but they did in Scotland. So we'll haggle over the beer. But yeah, this man isn't a mouse, he's a rat. And we all know it, but he's Prime Minister and he is doing unbelievable damage to this country. And this man is very, very dangerous. He's very dangerous. He's also very worried. He's frightened of us because we've started to wake up what they're doing. Now here she is, Julia Middleton, Chief Executive of Common Purpose. I'm going to go quite fast on these slides. We're going to produce a video of tonight, which we're going to encourage you to get one of the copies and you can distribute it. So if you don't catch some of it going through, I'm going to ask that perhaps you'll get a video and then we can get the facts that way. But this is Julia Middleton. She was seen in Devizes by one of the Truth Movement people. And he was intrigued because although she earns about £100,000 a year, if you look at her jacket, it's full of holes. And there was nothing in her basket, so he felt quite sorry for her and took a photograph. And the mouse is still up there. But this lady presides over a very big charity. And what I'm going to do is show you evidence. I don't do theory on Common Purpose, that's why I'm still talking. We're going to do evidence on what this organisation really does. And this is what I say about it, basically. It's a charity, that's a fact, but it's not charitable. It's not actually helping people, it's doing damage in this country. It's an organisation and it's an ideology, and that's an important thing. On the first slide, I didn't say Common Purpose, I said the Common Purpose. That's the ideology. It's working for change, and what it wants to do is follow the global agenda. Yeah? It's elitist, and it's mega wealth driven. Common Purpose pretends to be interested in poor people, but really it's in love with very rich people. And it breeds fraud and corruption via the secretive graduate networks. I didn't say they were secret, I said they're secretive. Yeah? And it attacks anybody who dares question them, and I'll prove that. So here's one of their big wheels, Sir David Bell, and if you go on the Common Purpose website you can see where he's made a statement that Common Purpose and Julia have been the subject of conspiracy theories, note the theory, and negative commentary, and they've been accused of everything from running Britain and Europe and the US being a secret brainwashing society. Yeah, so he's a pretty unhappy guy. They've been portrayed as criminals, child abusers, embezzlers of government funds, and being spies. And they've considered taking legal action. And what he's saying is absolutely true, because this, beg your pardon, sorry. So what he's saying about that is absolutely true, because he's come at me, which I'll show you in a minute. But if we look at this man who's making all these claims about how wonderful Common Purpose is, the key bit is that he was within a Cabinet Office leadership meeting at which they changed the minutes. So the minutes that were passed out to the public under any other business, sorry, I'll get there in a minute, was that the top 200 civil servants should be trained under workshops under the common purpose model, and committee members agreed to consider the costs. But that was a complete lie, because what they actually recorded was that Helen Ghosh, who we'll come on to with David Bell, agreed to cover the costs. Now, David Bell is senior trustee of Common Purpose, so this was insider dealing. This is sitting in a meeting and getting business for your own company. So my challenge to Mr. David Bell is he's not quite straight. Okay, real document. We've taken this from the UK column, but we hold the real documents which showed how these minutes were covered up. And this is Helen Ghosh, and she's an interesting lady because she was originally with DEFRA at the time foot and mouth was taking place. And I've got a feeling in the near future there's going to be some pretty amazing talks about foot and mouth, where people are saying it was a deliberate attempt to destroy, they did it, destroy Britain's livestock and farming. But we'll say maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but what I can tell you is true is here's Helen Ghosh. She's also working with Common Purpose, and she also believes in behavioural change, using applied psychology to change people's behaviour. This is not theory, this is fact. So here's Julia with a clip from one of her videos. It always comes out dark, but if you can see the eyes, they're interesting because she looks a little bit wild-eyed. She probably doesn't like me because of this photo. Well, she doesn't like me anyway, which is unkind, I think. So what does she think about? Well, this is Common Purpose's words, not mine. So there's an invisible space between the individual and the state. I think that's true. If we look at politicians at the moment, they don't really give a monkeys about us, and if you try and communicate with them about problems, they don't want to know. So there is a space. But Common Purpose is going to fill this space with as many of their people as possible. Do you get where they're coming from? Instead of you dealing with democratically elected people, you're going to deal with Common Purpose people. Their words. And then the ethos is a very interesting statement, because it says that as they do this across many countries, they're going to be independent and non-aligned. I don't think this statement's possible, because if I gather all of you together in this room to have one common view of society and politics and one common purpose, then you are automatically exclusive of people who have other opinions. So this is very weasel wording. They're independent, they're lovey-dovey people. Actually, they're driving a political agenda. And I'm going to try and take the lid off it for you. So, we've got a charity, but if we delve into it, we find that it's intimately connected with government. This is a Hansard statement going back to 1991, 25th of July, and Andrew Mitchell, asked the Secretary of State for what consideration he's given to the value of common purpose courses. And what Mr. Lee replies for his department is that since 1989, Common Purpose has been active in 15 cities, and 5 more are coming on stream. So we've got a charity that's so powerful. This is 89, this is 4 years after they say they were started. The government is helping them operate in 15 cities. Except we, the public, were never told about it. It was done under the radar. 5 more due to become operational by 1992. So the facts are all there. I haven't got to talk theory. You've just got to dig out the evidence. So basically, here's society with the government, public sector, all the quangos, the civil services, communities, ordinary people, and the private sector, and youth at the bottom, children. And what I always say is Common Purpose really loves children because they want to get into their minds. Here's the 15 cities, and in each of those cities they set up an advisory board where senior Common Purpose people choose who can become a Common Purpose graduate. So Common Purpose says that you can just get on their course willy-nilly. You can't, you've got to be selected. and I have documentation which shows how that procedure works. I can't show you all the evidence, we got too much, so I have to give you some of it. But if you say, I want to see the proof, I'll give you the document. Here's the space. If common purpose takes over that space, common purpose is starting to run bits of the country. It's starting to control us. So if we put them in there, this is the completed picture where they set up a network that recruits more and more people, and they want to recruit young children. They were interested in 14-year-old and up,